Everyone. Today we're talking about complex naturalization cases and how to obtain citizenship. We're going to cover a lot of material, but in reality, we're going to give you a lot of little nuggets of information. If something is relevant to your case, I suggest having a consultation, whether it's a second opinion or first time you're talking to an immigration attorney to make sure that you are on the right path. I'm a board certified immigration attorney, and we have a full service immigration law firm that's 14 years old. And we help individuals with family based, employment based, and asylum, removal, immigration court, litigation, humanitarian, all different types of cases within immigration. So, we're going to talk a little bit about different types of cases that can be a little bit complex and how in naturalization and how to overcome them and sort of issue spotting. So in general, when you're applying for naturalization, you have to have certain requirements to qualify. It's 5 years of green card status if you have your green card through work, or humanitarian, or some other means. And you can apply under the 3-year rule if you're married to a US citizen and living with them for the last 3 years. If you got your green card through marriage, but you're no longer and you haven't been living and married for the last 3 years to a US citizen, then you would have to use the 5-year rule. If you got it through work, but then you are married to a US citizen, and for the last 3 years, you could use the 3-year rule. That you just have to see which one you qualify for and makes sense. So let's go ahead and continue. So you have to have lived in the US a certain amount of time, demonstrate continuous permanent residence, either the 5 years or the 3 years, and physically present in the US for at least 30 months if you're going under the 5-year rule, and 18 months if you're going under the 3-year rule. And you have to have lived 3 months in the state or district where you claim residence. Now, it also can differ on some unique provisions that you don't have to meet some of those provisions. Now, one thing that we do is that we screen our clients really well, double check if they ever applied before, how did you obtain your legal permanent residency, talk about trips in and out of the country, maybe even doing a FOIA. And we also check to see if you're a citizen already in the first place, because sometimes people are and they don't realize it. Now, there's other things you have to consider. For example, speaking of being a citizen, is did you acquire citizenship or did you derive it potentially in the past? So you could have acquired it at birth, whether your parents were in wedlock or out of wedlock. You have to consider lots of things in terms of, were your parents married? Were they not? What year were you born? Was somebody in the military? There's like so many different provisions. And then derived after birth is something that if you met the qualifications, that could have become a citizen later. So maybe you got your citizenship through your parents, through acquisition, and you really have to look at the whole chart and evaluate that. More often than not, rarely do people find out that they're a citizen and they never knew it. But it is really good to evaluate that. And sometimes I'm there to help let them know the really great news. There's a lot of other things to consider in terms of acquiring citizenship after becoming a citizen after birth. That there was these other provisions that you had to have met on or after February 27th, 2001. And this is where at least one parent is a citizen by birth or through naturalization. The child is under 18, the child is a legal permanent resident, and the child is residing in the US in the legal and physical custody of the United States parent. There's also a lot more information about the assisted reproductive technology, and that can get a little bit more complicated. So definitely, I would say if that's the case, have a consultation. Midwife birth citizenship issues. We've had a lot of cases like this since we are in Texas, and this it's hard to say this in just a few seconds, but the biggest thing to note is whether or not you were born by a midwife, and would you have late registration of your birth certificate in the US, and if you have a Mexican birth certificate, was it registered before or after the US birth certificate? So those are some things to consider. But if you found out that you were born to a midwife, do check to see how long it took to register the birth certificate, and if you ever had a Mexican birth certificate, what happened with that. But we've had a lot of success with this, and it really a lot of different factors to consider. So definitely, if this is an issue for you and feel please give us a call. Now, you also need to make sure that you have the right good moral character. Good moral character means like not having problems with the law for the most part and some other things. But any issues, blemishes with the law can prevent you from being eligible. And you want to have a look back behind your shoulder and say, in the last 3 or 5 years, which rule you're using, do I have enough good moral character? And so certain things can be a complete bar. Challenges to good moral character, crimes involving moral turpitude, fraudulent green card activity, shoplifting, gambling, prostitution, failing to pay taxes, failing to pay court-ordered child support or alimony payments. That's another big one. So you can overcome these failing to pay issues by having a payment plan and having proof of that. Failing to support dependents, smuggling aliens, jail time, etc. So these are things that if this applies to you, you want to make sure that you've had an experienced immigration attorney review this with you, and not registering for the selective service while between 18 and 25 if you're male, but you can overcome that if it's been over the 3 and 5 years. And you have some documentation about that. So you want to prove that the totality of circumstances that outweigh favorable, that you have positive, good moral character, and this is employment history, education, etc. Now, permanent bars to good moral character. There are some, and those are things to look at that might keep you from ever getting your citizenship ever in your lifetime. Now, we also evaluate the physical and continuous residence, which is really important to note, especially because of a lot of travel history. So some people travel and they don't realize that all of that time can be preventing them from being eligible for citizenship, naturalization. So let's just say, which is true, there's 365 days in a year. And if you have 5 years, so we're using the 5-year rule, that's 1825 days, and you divide it by half. So you need to have lived in the US more than half of that time in the US. So let's just round it up to 913 days. So if you look behind your shoulder and you're using the 5-year rule, you need to have been in the US at least 913 days. If you use the 3-year rule, it has to be 548 days. So this is important, but you also need to make sure that you weren't out, if you were out more than 6 months, that you can maintain ties, and you definitely don't want to be out more than 1 year, because if you were out more than 1 year, you broke the continuous residence, and you're going to have to wait either 4 years and a day or 2 years and a day to be able to even begin to qualify again. Now, other things could be taxes, having a payment plan. So those are things that you want to make sure that you've cleared up. You also want to make sure that there wasn't any false claim to citizenship. Again, before 1996, false claims could be waived, but after September 26, 1996, there isn't a waiver. There's lots of other considerations to evaluate, but this is just in general something to avoid. Exceptions, if the parents were citizens, child made the false claim when they were under 18, child was a permanent resident prior to age of 16, or they reasonably believe that they were a citizen. Now, you also need to note who has jurisdiction over the N-400. And so this is another complex situation, is if your case gets denied at the USCIS and goes to to immigration court, we want to evaluate, is there an error by USCIS? What are you eligible for in immigration court? Should your case be dismissed? Can you get the case dismissed? And lots of different aspects. So or could you do a lawsuit regarding do you want to file a lawsuit? So there's a lot of different things to consider. We've helped a lot of individuals who've had their naturalization denied, what the next steps will be. But we've also been successful with a 237A1H waiver, where they shouldn't have gotten the green card in the first place, but because of the circumstances, they have enough good moral character they are able to get that approved in court, and then they go back to the date that their green card was approved in the first place. It's important to know your local office and how long processing times and how things are looked at and considered and how to move things forward. There's also the ability to when your spouse is working for a foreign or U.S. company or government entity to be able to speed through the naturalization process as well. So there's lots of different, and also military. So we didn't talk about all the complex issues, but there's a lot. So we just sort of issue spotted different things that could happen and things to think about. But if any of the things I just said resonate with you, probably should have a consultation at a very minimum. Naturalization process is quite fast right now in some places. If you file online, you're able to get an interview in some cases, like in a few months. And so that's really great that we're seeing that speed. I would just say that this is a really important, this is the last step for USCIS to see if they've made any mistakes in the past. And it's really important, at a very, very, very minimum, to have a consultation to evaluate your case. So we speak multiple languages, we have multiple attorneys. You can reach out to us and stay in touch with our case social media and receive our newsletter. And we'd love to help you. You can give us a call at 713-589-2085. And again, my name is Ruby Powers. I'm the board certified immigration attorney and managing a partner attorney with Powers Law Group. Thank you and have a